And then all of a sudden, I could see energy around the tree. And this was wild. This was so outside of anything that I thought was real. But it felt so natural and completely normal for me. Do you see aura? Do you see energy in your physical reality with your physical eyes? Or maybe you're really curious about learning how to, or wondering, is it even real? Maybe there's actually a visual disturbance called palinopsia, or maybe a mix of all three. Well, that's what I am sharing about today, because it's an experience that started for me when I began developing my intuition, when I started to remember these abilities that I have. And I truly feel that it is not something only for a few, that everybody can develop these inner senses that may manifest in our physical world if you're curious enough, if you want to. It is a very natural part of working with our energy and working with our intuition. And why I mentioned the visual disturbance, the palinopsia, is because I found that part of my visual disturbance could be this palinopsia. But it is very different than how I see energy and aura. So before I share more about seeing aura, what that looks like for me, how I see energy, we can even call it more of a spectrum of light. My name is Mary Treen, and I'm an intuitive guide, an energy healer, and a meditation teacher. And I really love to share about and talk about the unseen, but to offer more of a grounded approach to all things energy and intuition, all things mystical, but from a grounded lens. And that doesn't mean to take the magic out of it. It's to bring the magic more to the physical reality that we're living in. Bring the magic more to your daily life. When I was first starting out in my remembering and developing my intuitive abilities, I had no real interest in any spiritual theories or ideas or any of the kind of new age ideologies. I wasn't interested at all in any kind of gurus or leaders. It all seemed very religious to me. Same energy, but in a different way. But what happened many years ago is I was in a completely different career. I was very unhappy and I did not have any direction. I had no clarity around my purpose. What I was really yearning for was this pull, this path, somewhere to go, something to feel satisfied and fulfilled in. And I came to quite a breaking point. I was really not doing well. I had kind of lost the hope of even finding something to do in my life that I enjoyed. And this was in my early 30s. It was not in my 20s. This came far into a career. But even in my career, I was changing where I was in the industry at least every 18 months, but really about every 8 to 12 months, I would move to another position or a new role, thinking that that's what the problem was. But that was not the problem. The problem was that I had no relationship with myself, energetically, spiritually, and physically. I was so outside of myself. so ungrounded, so disconnected. So luckily, I reached out for help and I found a bunch of different support. I started meditating. I looked up so many different meditations on YouTube, looking for something that felt grounded enough that it didn't kind of alienate me, but also something that would make me feel calm and relaxed and myself, even a little bit. And then I found a therapist, super helpful. And then I found someone who not only did therapy, but also offered a form of energy healing, of guided energy healing. And that was the first time I had ever connected to my energy within, to my energy centers, to my chakras, to my field, to my intuition, to the language of my intuition, how my intuition speaks to me. This was all very new. But the curious part was that it was extremely familiar. It wasn't completely outside of my scope. It felt so natural, like really natural. And I'm sharing this because I really want to give you a background and an idea around the fact that seeing energy, seeing aura, being in your intuitive abilities, practicing them, that seeing aura, seeing energy, learning how your intuition speaks to you, really learning the language of your intuition, which can be in your physical, objective reality. It doesn't have to exist outside of you. I don't believe it does. It's not something to reach for or somebody to give you. It's a remembering. You're remembering this very natural way that you work with your energy, but also the energy of everything in our world and our universe, because we're not separate from it. We're actually connected. And part of being able to see energy and aura, that's what it has brought me, is that awareness of, oh, we are not separate at all. And I want to share about this on my channel, not to convince anyone. No, I want to share because I want to know if you also experience this, or maybe something similar. How do you see? How do you understand energy? Can you translate the energy you see and the aura you see? And I wanted to share about my experience with seeing energy and aura and the difference between how it could also be part of this visual disturbance that is not super rare, but not talked about that often, because I want to know if you do, if you see it that way, if you see energy or aura in a different way. And in my work as an intuitive and as an energy healer, I share about this in my work, but have not really shared about it outside of it. And this is my experience. This is not about if it is real, tested, true. This is about sharing how I see the world and see the unseen world. Because I know when I started to remember and see energy and aura this way too, I would have loved to find a video telling me about their experience, because all I could find were insights and structures and books and many different things explaining the translation of aura. That's all I could really find. I could find a bit around the aura of things, the energy field around things, our energy field, our energy centers, But everything that I found, it was very tied to the meaning that, oh, if your energy field is this color, then it means this. And sometimes that is true. But often, what I've found in many different ways that people speak to aura is if they see it that way, if they say, oh, this color means this, then that tends to become the rule. Where, in my experience, our intuition, the language of our intuition, each one of us is very unique. And yes, sometimes we can have a similar way that we translate our intuitive abilities, but we can be very quick to reach outside of ourselves for the answer or for the meaning. And if you look at traditional translations of energy fields and their meanings, many times they are connected to the meaning of the energy center or the chakra, similar to crystals. So if a certain color is in the energy field, then that tends to correspond to the meaning of that color to the chakra or the energy center that that color represents. With crystals too. If you looking up the meaning of a crystal, more often than not, that crystal has a meaning based on the color. And the color meaning is based on the symbolism and the meaning for the color that is corresponding to the energy center. And that can be true and very helpful, but it's not always true. I feel and have experienced that we all have a very specific way to translate color, a very specific way to translate symbols, feelings, intuitive understanding. Our knowing is more clear than any other knowing outside of us. Because when it comes to energy, when it comes to especially energy fields, auras, nobody knows. Nobody knows for sure. We can learn from translations from ancient scriptures, ancient texts. We can learn from people channeling, receiving their insights from deep hypnotism, journeys. But all of the information, everything that is being shared with us about the meaning of the unseen, of the spiritual, of the world around us, all of that information that is translated for us, given to us, shared with us, very helpful, but it's translated through people's filters, through the filter of their own energy, of their own references, of what they believe to be true. So the main point of me sharing my experience, and hopefully in many more videos to come, is to offer a way for you to feel more empowered, more connected to your intuition, to what you know to be true, to how you translate the energy, to how you see. There's no right or wrong way. And that's the most exciting part of developing our intuition, of learning about all things energy, all things intuition, all things unseen, is that you get to know more about your true self and what you actually know already. And I hope with everything I share that it helps you remember, perhaps, that you are seeing something that you didn't really pay attention to before. Maybe your eyes are translating energy intuitively, and you didn't fully understand that. So after a few months of really deep diving into my energy, my heart, my soul, figuring out, oh, there is something here for me. An awareness started to open up. And this one morning, before I was on my way to work to a job that I really didn't want to do anymore, but I had no idea what I was going to do. And I was standing at this stop waiting for the bus to take me to work. And I was looking at this tree that I stood near 5 days a week. But I started to look at it with a softer gaze. I started to be more present with it. That's what the therapy and the energy work and the meditation, that's what it had really started to give me, is this way for me to be grounded and present, to be in my body, in my energy. And so I was looking at this tree, but not really looking. And then all of a sudden, I could see energy around the tree, around the trunk. And I call it energy because that's what it felt like. It felt like the energy of this living tree was expanding outside of its structure, that it was part of its structure, that it was part of its vitality, of its life. And I stared at vision, this new vision that I all of a sudden had. And I could see this energy opening up around the trunk, around the branches, and it wasn't necessarily glowing, but it was light. And it looked transparent, but also with color, but very sheer and not an obvious color, kind of a blend of colors. And it was a bit wavy. There was a wave to the energy. And it was moving, but not in a fast way, very subtly moving. And it was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. And then I looked down at my hand and I could see the same thing around my hand. I could see this light that wasn't bright, but was definitely lit up. And it was sheer around my hand. It had a bit more of a green tone, a little bit of gold, I remember. And every time I moved my hand, it wouldn't leave. It would just become more present. Like moving my hand created more energy around my hand. And this was wild. This was so outside of anything that I thought was real. But it felt so natural and completely normal for me. And since then, those many years ago, it never went away. It never went away. But I don't see it everywhere I look. I see it when I soften my gaze and look at living things, but also inanimate objects. When I look at a tree or a plant or a flower or my hand or another person or a client that I'm working with or a group of people or literally also inanimate objects, which are not so inanimate because they carry energy too. Now, I'm not sure if the inanimate objects carry their own energy. I haven't fully discovered that yet. I know that there is an idea of animism, that everything is animated, but going from my own experience, I haven't discovered yet whether the living world around the inanimate objects are what offers the energy, or whether the inanimate object is in itself an energetic being. And let me know what you think. What have you discovered? Because I'm still learning about that, considering. And so this just stuck. And part of the amazing aspect of it is that what I realized is that the way that I was looking at the tree was the exact same way that I looked at a magic eye painting, those stereograms from the 90s, if you've ever looked at those. That's how I see energy and aura, exactly the same way. And then I started looking at magic eyes and I realized that I could see them quick. All of a sudden, turning on, remembering this way of seeing energy and aura, the energy field, our aura, the spectrum of light of our energy, whatever you want to call it, all of a sudden I thought, oh, this feels like the magic eyes that I used to look at. I remember being pretty good at those. And so I found a bunch online and I started looking at them and I could do them so fast, like within seconds. And then I realized that I could also close my eyes and open them, and the magic eye would still be there because I had shifted into understanding how to shift my gaze into being able to see it. And I'm going to bring up a few examples of what I'm talking about and also a few magic eyes too, so we can do some together. But if you've ever done those and you did find that you were great at them and that you really loved them, that could be a sign that you already know how to see an aura or see an energy field. You just have to apply that way that you soften your gaze and you look at those magic eyes to a plant, a tree, a flower, whatever you're looking at. So I would suggest to try it and do a few of them, see what happens, and then use that same muscle to start to see the energy field. Start with your hand. But what is that visual disturbance I was talking about? What is that palinopsia? Well, it's the closest thing that I found to another aspect of seeing that I have found over the course of the years. And it's something that I have done since I was a kid. And I realized that also seeing the aura and the energy is something that I've done since I was a kid too. But these two things are separate. And it actually shows me how distinct seeing energy and aura is from the palinopsia. So the palinopsia is a visual disturbance and it comes in different ways for different people. But for me, researching about palinopsia, this is the closest that I can connect to for what I experience and why it's different than seeing aura. So you may have this already and not really realize it. There are some aspects of it that people have that do need treatment because they see these visual disturbances all the time. And the way that I see it, I don't. And it is different than seeing the aura. So the palinopsia is seeing something, a person, object, what have you, and if you look at it for long enough, you will see the after image. Now, this is already a phenomena that everybody has, but it's, looking at the red dot for 20 seconds and then looking to the white wall and seeing the green dot, the opposite color. But for me, I look at something that has a distinct color for a few seconds, and all of the sudden, that same object, whether it's on a screen or in physical reality, if it's a towel or a notebook or a pen or something just with a lot of color, it will look like the aura of that object is kind of lifting off of it. So say it's a lime green notebook. So if I see a lime green notebook for a few seconds, it will look like the field, the energy field of that notebook in that exact shape starts to lift off of the notebook. But it lifts off of the notebook in that same translucence that I see aura in, but the color will be the exact opposite of the lime green from the color wheel. In the lime green, usually it's like a bright violet. So it's in the same shape in the bright violet, and then it starts to move and kind of float in the ether and then disappears. It can kind of move back and forth depending on where I'm looking, but it has its own way of moving. And it is a visual disturbance because it's not something that I'm trying to do, but anyone else that I know that has this, they also see different things within the unseen. So I'm curious if you have it, if you also have more of a relationship to energy and what is happening in the unseen world that we're living in. So the difference for me in seeing the palinopsia color after image is that I don't have to look at something for a long time, but I also don't see it on everything. So it isn't very much of a disturbance in my life. It's really beautiful. And I do remember in school when I was bored doing that with people's backpacks and pens and different things, just kind of using this as a trick that my eyes could do. But the reason that I am sharing about the palinopsia is because learning more and really allowing and connecting more and recognizing and being really aware of when these contrasting complementary colors are working from the physical object and then creating this visual in the ether that only I can see. What it did is it helped me understand how separate that experience of the palinopsia is from seeing energy, energy fields, and aura. Because when I soften my gaze and connect to seeing energy in objective reality around people, plants, trees, inanimate objects, my own hands, all the things, the difference is that the aura and the energy field don't float away. They are slightly moving, like I shared before, around the tree, but they're not moving away from the person or the thing. They're part of it. It's a spectrum of their life force, spectrum of the light that they're emitting. And there's been so much research around that. Recently, there was also a study done around where they were using mice, sadly, but they had a live mouse and then a dead mouse, and they found that the live mouse was emitting this light. And then when it died, the light wasn't there anymore. So this light that we have is part of our being, maybe of our consciousness, of our soul. I don't know. That's the best part about the work that I do, is I don't know. I know what I experience and what I receive, but is it 100% true? I don't know. It's a mystery. The more we know, or the more I know, the less I know, but the more comfortable I am in not knowing. So I put together a few images to share more details around what I'm describing that will hopefully make a bit more sense and allow you to discover for yourself if you are already doing this and you haven't really realized. And I just find it really interesting. So the first image that I'm sharing here is a stock image. I tried to find where it's from, but I did a reverse Google search, cannot find it. So if you know what book this is from, please put it in the comments so that I can give it credit. But when I first started to see that first time, when I remembered how to see energy and aura, I looked this up, and this was the first image that came, the first one that felt right. And this is a technique for somebody connecting to the tree's aura, which is something you can do as well. In my experience, you don't actually have to be near the tree. Our energy transcends space and time. But if this is resonating with you, you may want to try it. Maybe connecting your field to the tree's field will allow you to see it in a different way, in the way that you're meant to see it. But this is how I saw it, with the energy kind of waving back and forth. And when I saw this, even though it's such a simple image, and I hadn't yet really thought about working with energy, I hadn't yet become or trained in any kind of energy healing modalities, but this made sense to me. When I saw this, I thought, oh, here we go. This is it. And then I found these images. Now, these are from Kirlian photography, and it's a technique from the 1930s where they started to almost electrocute objects with a soft amount of electricity, from what I understand. And then they would take a photograph on a certain type of activated film so that they could see this excess of energy. And there's a whole other story around that. So maybe I'll share about that, do a deep dive around that one day. But I wanted to share these photos because if you look at the plants and the flowers and the trees, this is very similar to how I see energy and aura and the energy field. If you look at the hand, I wanted to put this one in because the hand received electricity. There was a type of electrocution, even though that sounds pretty intense. So they added electricity to this hand, to this person, to kind of activate the electrical field. And if you see the light is like splicing out, kind of spiky, that's not how I see it. That's not how I see the energy. The energy field, in my experience, in my vision, is very fluid, very smooth, and I can actually see from this picture how an excess, like jolt of energy could fracture our energy field. And that was really interesting to me. So maybe something else that we'll look at another time, but it reminds me of when we are overloaded with excess energy, not only of our own, but maybe of other people, when we're feeling very ungrounded. This to me is a perfect example. If you look at this hand, this is a perfect example of why we need to release excess energy out of our bodies, out of our energy bodies, why we need to balance and harmonize it, why grounding is so important because the earth energy generously helps us to balance that energy of our field. And without it, we can get a jolt of energy and then look at the fractal, spiky disturbance in the field. I can just understand how disorienting that can feel. And then I found this image from Wikipedia about palinopsia and the type that I have, and maybe you have too. And one thing about this picture, though, it's not spooky like this. It's not somebody's eyes are closed and then their after image is in their other color and they're looking at me. No, it would be the exact same looking down, but in that color. And then this translucent color image would float away, move around the ether, and then kind of disappear. But this is exactly how I see it, with the contrasting color in that transparent texture, but the eyes open are an artistic choice on this picture. But I wanted to show that because maybe you are seeing this and maybe my description wasn't as clear to you. So visually, Maybe this is helping you see, oh, I have palinopsia. Here it is. And then this is visual snow. This is what a lot of people call what I'm talking about. They think, oh, that's visual snow. You just have that problem. You have floaters. But this is not what I see. So visual snow is not part of my experience. The more traditional, I'll put traditional because the more common palinopsia. And this is where it can really disturb your life because you see it like this all the time. So in here, if you see a dog running, you see their after image in the same tone over and over and over again. And then with the banana here too, tracking that image. But this is not my experience. Mine is specifically the contrasting color. And then this is another aspect of that palinopsia where very tracking like with the energy of the object and your eyes are just not catching up with it fast enough. They have a lot of different ways of describing this, the ophthalmologists, but sometimes it can look like this, where colors are kind of mixing together and overlaying, and that would make it really hard to drive. So I understand that this is not great for everyone. So again, this is how I see it. That's the palinopsia, the only way that I've been able to describe the way that I see the color floating off of each object, but it's not how I see energy field or aura. Completely different. And now I wanted to share a few of the magic eyes. I can do a longer video around the magic eyes, around how to soften your gaze and see energy that maybe you aren't noticing, because I really feel like we all see it. We just don't know how to shift our awareness to see it. And that is the subtle shift in all intuitive development. We all have the ability, but it's a subtle shift to be able to open up and remember the otherworldly ways that we can activate our inner awareness of our hearing, seeing, feeling, knowing, smelling, so many ways that we can understand and translate the world around us, but especially connecting to the unseen world around us. And here are some magic eyes that you can practice with. I won't spoil what they are, but this is an example. And then this one. And then if you want to begin to learn how to do this, you can begin with even a candle. So moving from the magic eye to a candle. But I put a candle here in the dark because less light around you allows you to focus in a better way, in a more easeful way to really see the energy field. And then once you understand that technique and bring that remembering back to how to use your eyes this way, all of a sudden you start to see so many colors around the flame, like wide, wide, wide expanding colors, not just the white and the orange. It's beautiful. And then you can shift to your hand. So this is a really lovely technique that is natural and part of us. And if you're curious about it, begin. All right. So do you see aura? Do you see energy? Do you have palinopsia? What have you discovered from everything I shared? Let me know in the comments. Tell me if you resonate with what I'm saying, if this is the first time that you have realized, wait, I know how to do this. And let me know if you want to learn more, if you have any questions about all of the intuitive abilities, how to find them, remember them, what my experience is, any questions you have about a grounded spirituality, grounded intuitive development on how to read aura, read energy, and open up this sight that we all have into the physical reality of our universe. There is so much happening between everything that we think is just air. It's not. It is active, it is alive, and it's part of us. So I hope that this inspired you to connect in a deeper way to your intuition and how your intuition speaks to you. And yes, I hope you subscribe to my channel so you see my next video, and you can check out my podcast, Intuitive Seek. You can listen to it on my channel here or anywhere you get your podcasts. And thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you. And this was my first video sharing about my experiences. And you can go to the description and you'll see all the links that you need for so many different resources that I have for you and ways that you can explore on how my intuitive work and energy healing can support you. So thank you again. Be extra kind to yourself, and I will see you next time.